what you'd hear in virtually any operating area from ancient times, as we see here, up until the advent of anesthesia, which would mean the patient would be knocked out. And from this period, from ancient times to roughly the mid-1800s, surgery was a very, very dangerous undertaking. Speed was a paramount because pain could not be controlled effectively, and blood loss was a very, very high risk. Oftentimes, the only operations that took place were trepanations, meaning they would bore a hole into the skull in the belief that it would alleviate mental illness or release demons, or amputations to remove an infected or severely damaged limb. This tradition carried on through history, through medieval period and the Renaissance. As we can see here, the surgeon is removing a bullet during a battle, as we can see in the background, up until the 19th century when anesthesia became more common. We can see an amputation taking place here, where the patient is having to be held down so that the surgeon can remove the limb. Because this was before anesthesia, before pain relief became a commonality in surgery. After surgery became common and we understood more about how the human body worked and how infection worked, surgical rooms were cleaner, more care was taken in making sure the patient was sedated and that they weren't feeling pain with the new anesthetics such as ether and chloroform, along with the advent of opium. Once we understood more about germ theory, we could prevent infection, and clean rooms and sterile equipment and instruments became the standard. As time passed on, with the time and safety that was afforded by asepsis, which is the prevention of infection due to the knowledge that we acquired, procedures could be invented and improved. Many procedures were invented in the infancy of modern surgery as we know it in the early 20th century. As we moved into the mid-20th century, there was more focus on day-to-day procedures. Surgery was seen as much safer than it was for the generation before. As we can see here, they're doing a trepanation, much like they would have in ancient times. But this was more focused on alleviating neurological issues or a brain tumor, or in some cases a lobotomy, which would be a form of psychosurgery, so operating on the brain to relieve mental illness. They believed that it would do this. As we moved into the late 20th century and modern day, we saw a focus on making incisions smaller, so making surgery less invasive. So surgeons were using something called laparoscopic technique. So that would involve tubes with a much smaller incision, so a much smaller wound in the skin. They'd use a camera and very, very small instruments to do the surgery, which is how a lot of the more open surgeries, as they're called, were performed about 30 years beforehand, before laparoscopics became the standard. In short, surgery is a rapidly advancing field with improvements being made every day. Surgery used to be a very dangerous undertaking. We didn't know much about the body until recently in history, not even 200, not 20, years ago. We became much more knowledgeable with the years that passed on, and now surgery is a very safe and reputable institution where advances are still being made to this day. So be thankful that modern surgery is what it is, and sally forth with your new knowledge of the wild, wonderful, and macabre world of surgery.